I'll take care of you. Have your feed. How are you today? Huh? Are you not well? Maybe you'll sing for me later, huh? And they had a dance hall, and Claire McAllister's dance hall. We'd go into that thing, you know. So Christ almighty, I remember when we had no hair oil, we'd maybe get to drop castor oil and put it in the hair, and sure, when you'd warm up, it'd be running down the face. But there was a lot of fellas from gathered from Mayo come in, because we're on near hand, you see, but we'd be coming out at 2 o'clock in the morning, and some fella shout, eggs and rashers for the Sligo slashers, and the Mayos licking the plate. And of course the row was up immediately. You know, there was a lot of devilment used to go on, you know, like, not bad stuff, but, you know, just something to do. There was nothing else to bloody do anyways, you know, like cayenne pepper. I don't know if you ever seen, if you like that stuff. Put that into a little bit of cotton wool and light it, and we went to McAllister's hall, and, you know, everyone started sneezing and coughing. Cleared the deck out. And that tied in under the shoe, you see, and everyone sneezing. But yet I seen one time there was an old place outside Clare. This fella had an old donkey, and he'd eat you, lashing and kicking and roaring. 2 of the boys captured him and brought him into town. And the dance was on, you see, and there was the middle door. You go in a small one, they opened it and shoved the old donkey in. And I'm up and down to the dance hall, I'm lashing and praying. And the women up on seat roaring. That whole development like that. And I know another fella there now. I shouldn't be telling you these things, but it was a very cold winter, and a donkey died just outside the town. And this fella, he had a hare's lip. And there was another fella from down, another part outside the town, but down near to Corrie had a hare's lip. And they were going, your man was going up the bridge of Clare, and it was night time, and he met your man from trouble. Good night, he says to your man. So the other fellow says, good night yourself. So the first one said, what are you trying to do? Take the piss out of me, you son of a bitch. And the fight. But this old donkey had died anyway. And it was cold winter. And I knew the fellas. Now, I wasn't involved. But anyways, they carried him over and left him up against the door of the house. He was frozen solid. And knocked on the door. Of course, the man opened the door and the donkey fell into the kitchen. He couldn't get him out. The door opened winter's night, and this donkey 3/4 way in, head up. All development like that used to go on, you know. And I remember there was one woman in the village, an elderly woman, and God Almighty, she had a nose on her as long as a pig. And she was in the bed, she was in bed all the time, you know. In fact, used to call the collar. But she had got the idea that putting some hen eggs into the bed and that she'd hatched them out. Well, on me oath, after a couple of weeks, didn't they bloody eggs? They did. And you'd see the chickens, they used to have oatmeal, and she'd have to pull the sheet up and throw it around, and she was pretending she was like the hen. And she'd throw this oatmeal around. But after a couple of weeks, they took them out of there. But I can see her yet, the poor woman, and she'd make a mug of tea, and she'd put a spoon of butter into the tea, be floating around on the top of the tea. I don't know why, and she had the longest nose I think I ever seen on a woman. But yes, we used to call her the Anteater. Well, Lord God. Matchmaking was an art within itself for some fellow. Now, he was never a big man. He'd be a small, what they used to call them, the older people, a big man, would call him a quarterbuck. He'd be a small man, and he'd definitely have the gift of the gab. He could nearly talk you into hanging yourself. But there would be some lady in the village, the brother, that she wanted to see. The money that the brother would give with her when he'd go matchmaking, he'd get a dowry again, which would be nearly money. It was nearly going round in a circle. Now, it depended on her face was her fortune in a lot of cases. If she was a woman with a hump, we'll say, you'd want a lot more money. And then you'd have some women might have, we'll say, bunches of hair on the chin, like thistles. That would be again warrant that there'd have to be a big dowry. But the man in himself would come round, she would have no input into it, and the whiskey would be introduced. Naturally, it was illicit whiskey, and you'd know the little matchmaker, the nose on him, and it is red on the top as a strawberry. And there would be 3 or 4 occasions. He would first have the matchmaking for her. Then they would come back another day to count the cow's tie-ins. Of course, that was an excuse to come back for more drink. They would have to come back another day then, we'll say, to view the land. And another thing about the land was, if you had fairly good acreage of land, to be very eager for the woman to get married. But if you had a few acres of bog only, I suppose you'd be lucky to get to shake hands. But that was the deal, and it was the woman would marry the man, usually an elderly man. And of course, you know, a lot of, well, they didn't get divorced or anything, but I'd say myself it wasn't something that was made in heaven, you know, that kind of a way. I've seen time and time again, the matchmaking, it was standard practice. Oh yes, well, they would have to look at the dung stage. And there was, at that time, they used to have a whole dug outside with a load of turf mould in it. And the seepage from the manure would go into that. They didn't want to lose it, it was fertilizer. All of these things had to be inspected by the matchmaking man. And then, like I said, there was a thing called the Gowlon Veil. It was a long piece of timber with the branch on the top. It was called Gowlon, as you know yourself, it's a V, and Veil is mouth. The houses were all made of bogdale that they got in the bog, couples, and it'd be low and thatched. And how it was done, the couple would go up, then they put on branches, then scraws, and then it was thatched. And there was, in case, the Gowlon Veil's idea was that if a couple broke, you'd put it up against it to stop the roof from falling in. That had to be looked at when the matchmaker came. But I suppose that was another excuse to get drink. If someone died in the village, see, it's a business now here in this country which I don't like myself anyway, but if someone died, 2 women in the village would take to leave the body overboard, they called it, wash it and clean it up. 2 men would go to town and get the coffin, which was Finnegan and Clare. The coffin would come out, the dead body was put in. They put a chair at either end where the coffin sat on it, on the end of the chair and there. And it would be put along a window, and the windows were small detached cabins. And they would borrow, if they didn't have it, a white lace curtain. And they put a black bow on it. And they would light a wax candle on the window. And that was standard practice for someone that would die. Then the neighbours came in and they say a prayer, and God knows there'd be a lot of drink too in them places. It was mandatory that there would be drink. And the body was never left alone. When a person died, they stopped the clock at exactly the time the person died, and they would open the window, they said, to let the spirit out. But then the wake at night, there would be neighbours would stay with the wake at night, and the next thing, then at that time, they had a thing called a sidecar. Now, a trap was ovaled round with seats inside, but a sidecar was similar, but they sat back to back. You go up on the step and turn your back. And in the centre, there was a piece of space of timber. The coffin would be put up on that and tailed down. This is how they would go from the house to the church. And there used to be women in my time, but it was the beginning of the end, they were called banquinches. There were women that was paid to lament, and they'd sit up on the sidecar, one either side, and I can see them yet. I knew one of them very well. Long black clothes under, made of, I suppose it wasn't whatever it was, calico, down to her shoes. And every now and again, as they were going along the road, nice and steady, and the people followed them, they'd start, "Oh, the water, water, Paddy is gone. Oh, the water, what'll we do? Oh." And then they wanted to say, every periodically along the road. And they'd get maybe 2 shillings for doing this. They were known as banquinches, crying women. And then they go to the church. And something that often made me wonder, when the corpse was put into the grave and they would backfill it, the woman would walk across the grave 3 times, 1 foot in front of the other. I never knew what it meant, and I often watched them do it. I don't know, they had their own way of what it meant, I don't know. But then after the funeral and that, them 2 chairs would be put outside, and anything that had to do with the corpse, bedclothes or anything, would not be touched or washed for 7 days. And then after 7 days, the chairs would be brought back in and the bedclothes were washed and all that. That was standard practice with them. It is a thing wrote in the book on a fairy thing there, and the fellow was lifted with the thing, and he met a lovely red-haired woman, and they danced all night and all this kind of stuff. And it was not, the fairy forest alone, white thorn, was an omen for the fairy fort, you know. And the people used to get what they call lifted. And they would lose their way, and they were just going along, and all of a sudden they get lost. They go around, going around the field, up and down, and couldn't get out of it. And that did happen. I know that they reckon the right thing, what they used to do was take off your jacket and turn it inside out and put it on again. This was supposed to get them out of it. I don't know. You see. But the fairies, yeah, well, you see, a lot of musicians reckon that, you know, they got tunes from fairies coming from a wedding or something like that. But I still believe in the fairies myself. Well, they might look like one myself, but yeah, well, there was 45 houses in the village. And I have wrote quite a bit there about American wakes and people going, see, there would be an average, we'll say, of 6 kids, we'll say, in each house, by an average. And we'll come back from 45 to 40. And 6 times 40, you see, is 240 people, all immigrated out of a village. The side of that hill was known as the Crying Hill. And every day there was someone going away. They wouldn't be long out of school till they'd pack the bag and head off to England or Australia or America or somewhere. And they had everyone vowed to be back, you know, and you'd hear the old people crying and shaking hands to these people. And that a great saying, you know, then to pays themselves, I suppose. There's hope from the ocean, but none from the grave. The taxi man taken off, and the last thing was they'd have a wave of the handkerchief out of the window of the car, and they were gone. Every week there was 2 and 3 going every week. It's gone, the houses is gone, fell an end, and the forestry came along and planted the thing. It's just a sad scene for people that knew it, but people that didn't live through it, they have no idea of what it was like. It was an awful heartbreak for the people, 6 and 8 kids, and then they were all gone, you know. It got the name of the American Wake because all the neighbours came in, and the person that was going to immigrate would be there, of course, and there'd be fiddles and flutes going on them, dancing, half sets and stack of barley, and on the old flag floor, be knocking sparks out. They used to wear shoes that time called time testers, all hobnail shoes or clogs. But as the night wore on, you know, and people starting to say goodbye to the immigrant that was gone, and they'd always give them a few shillings, maybe 10 shillings or something, you know. And I said, well, finally dwindled down to daylight was coming, and the old hackney car would be coming, the lights of it shining. There was a very, very changed tune, you know. You see the mother hung the daughter and her crying. I've seen a lot of it. Yeah, well, That's how it was. Well, I left at a very young age. There was 8 in the family. We were living, this was now a joke I used to tell the fellas, see, we were living up on the side of the hill which we were, and there was an old wet field down below the house. And indeed, the few rags I had with me, I could have left them after me. They were of no value, but I was going away down through this wet field and this old few rags with me, and my father was hollering, "Come back, come back." God, I says, he don't want me to go, I'll go back up again. But no, not you. The dog was following you. I remember quite well, and this is facts, I might have £3 in my pocket, and I'd be maybe 15. And we got the bus and us went for the Harvest bus stop, and we went to Dublin. And we across on a cattle boat. We got into Liverpool, we got off at one place, and they let the cattle off. You could see them coming out onto the boat going up the runway, and then they picked up again, and we went farther up, and I got off. We got off, and you went through customs, you know, like, and what they did, they just open your bag and they'd look inside it, and then they'd close it and put a chalk mark on it, you see. And I remember him looking into my bag just when I opened it up, and he looked at me. "Oh, holiday clothes," he said. All there was an old pair of shoes and an old pants. But I remember while I went out on the street anyway in Liverpool, sure, I didn't have a clue, you know, where I was going. And I was standing on the street, and I don't know who the man was, but he was an Irish man. This big fellow come up to me, about 30 years of age, hair receding a little bit. And he must know I was lost, and he says, "Come with me." And he took me to the Salvation Army. And I stayed with the Sally then for maybe a week or so. You'd get a mug of tea in the morning and toast and maybe a spoon of beans. And they were good now. The Sally was good to me. And I used to hang about and mop the hall and that. And I get the dinner. But there was a woman there, and she was asking me questions, and did I want to get married and that. And sure, I was only 15. You know, I thought that I better get out of here. So I got on the bus and I went into a place called Accrington, which was sitting in Lancashire. And I got hired from a little farmer called Harold Hacken. And I was sleeping out in an old barn. It was summertime, and I was haymaking. We'd be working from 6 in the morning to 12 at night, but they used to go into the house. And the thing was, sliced bread was just come out at the time, and they had, in England, they were hungry, see? And they could make what they wanted. They would cook something into a high temperature, then jar it, but they could add whatever flavour they wanted with fish or, we say, beef or lamb or anything, just they spread that on the bread. And they were tripe. I couldn't eat that tripe. Oh, God, cows are there, you know. Look at Jesus Christ. So the Englishman said to the wife, "Give the Irish chap banana." And I got this banana, and I ate its skin and all. I didn't know enough to peel it.